Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another video. In this particular video, I will be doing an in-depth analysis behind the leader mentality. When analyzing any particular personality, you may find one particular truth. Each individual is a separate individual to each other individual. You might say, well, I'm technically the same person all the time. But I want you to pay close attention to each interaction you have with each particular individual throughout your day. You might find that according to your emotional state, your mental thought process, and what else might be going on throughout your day, that you are essentially a different person upon each and every single interaction. You may find that from the previous interaction, you may carry the previous emotion based on that previous interaction. This ultimately leads to you being a different person each and every single day to each single every other person. Which ultimately begs the question, according to that particular way of life, if you yourself cannot remain true to one particular way of being to each and every other single particular individual you may meet, you may find you create polarities. According to these polarities you create in other individuals, you then see, according to your interaction with individuals, that other individuals whom have created a duality of polarities in their interaction with you as well, themselves will then react to other individuals in their own particular way, and this grows exponentially. This is, you could say, a butterfly effect. From one ripple alters the continuation of the fabrics of time. And the fabrics of time are according to the interactions each and every particular individual has with each other particular individual. What makes a leader? Now, according to this particular in-depth analysis behind personality, what makes a leader is an individual that can stay the same to all people, that stays their true self to all people. Now you might say, well, that can either be good or bad. But is good and bad not part of every single individual? If good and bad are part of every single individual, what ultimately drives the individual in being the same to all other individuals? You might say that their ability to speak the truth to all individuals. And even if said leader has evil attached to them, do they only present in goodness, known as being inherently good? In understanding a leader, you may find a leader such as Christ an exemplary leader that was himself to all individuals, which according to all individuals he was himself to. You may see the effects it has had on humanity. According to each particular individual self, we see a duality, opposing polarities in their response to a leader, an individual that is themselves at all times. In understanding that a leader is themselves at all times, what ultimately is the deciding factor behind the experience of the population? According to the dualities of polarities each particular individual may experience towards or away from said leader, we may find at the individual self the divide in ideologies. According to each divide in each particular individual, the divide of ideologies ultimately is what is their driving force in life, which according to this driving force, you then step back into the two mentalities of either being the leader, or being that which is led. In understanding that according to an individual able to be themselves to all individuals, known as a leader, which is inherently good, you may find that in the dualities of each particular individual, some may arise a negative experience due to the leader being able to be inherently good to all others, but they themselves, in their own experience, are unable to. Why might that be a driving force in the divide in the ideology? Within leftist ideology, we see a common concept, neuroticism, known as a narcissistic tendency. Because I didn't get to have that, you don't get to have that either. Where then we arise the concepts of equity. I'm not going to dive into leftist ideology, but in the neuroticism we find jealousy. In jealousy, we then see where the driving force behind said mentality arises in. Said jealousy is the reason you are unable to remain the same person to each and every other individual person, which arises a question of personality. Who are you? Because if according to your environment, pardon the dogs, if according to your environment, you yourself can easily be moldable and changed from person to person to person to person in your experience, if you can easily be changed in your own individual experience according to each particular interaction you may have, well, ultimately the question that I arise with is, who are you? Because that individual self can't be defined at any particular point at this rate. because you are not able to stick to one particular individual self, that which you can be to all other individuals, known as being a leader. And this is done by choice, not at a free given. You can imagine from the perspective of electrical currents or through magnetism, these particular polarities are of the same function, you could imagine. The positive is continuously moving forward, whereas the negative is creating the pathway, pulling that positive towards itself. A positive and negative pull. Which means the positive, anytime it moves, results in the negative moving away. Whereas if a positive is met by another positive, you may find a rejection, which ultimately leads to a battle of egos. In said battle of egos, we then see the individual self in their own particular moral compass at which they drive their values from. According to these particular values, you then see if that individual stays true to themselves. But the question relies on, is that ego who thyself is? Is that not a point you yourself do not move from? And if that ego you do not move from, what ultimately is the driving force behind your decision making, if not your ego? What is the self ultimately? And understanding that the self is everything in itself, just as much as it is nothing in itself. If you attach yourself to each particular emotion, you change to each particular individual. If you attach yourself to every particular thought, you change to each particular individual. If you attach yourself to your ego, anytime you are moved, you change to your particular ego. Which derives the question of what makes a good leader. A good leader is that which speaks the truth and puts all others above themselves. A good leader is an individual that speaks the truth, arising the truth in all individuals, which once again arises the notion of Christ. An individual example, which, if you follow, you may be given a fair judgment. in being a good leader? What might be a fundamental prayer? For the Spirit of God does not make us timid, but gives us strength, love, and self-discipline. Amen.